Hickling, an area of Norfolk where serenity has been threatened with the recent publication of a local news story.
When I first heard about it, several weeks before the story actually appeared in print, I almost thought it was just too unlikely to be true. And I realised that the implications were pretty serious for the people living in those villages in that area.
However, the residents of these 6 villages swiftly realised this story could be true, as they discovered Natural England, a government statutory body, had held a controversial meeting to discuss the options for the future of 25 square miles of North Norfolk.
Natural England's a statutory body. It's here to protect and enhance the natural environment for this generation and those generations to follow.
As sea levels rise and land in the area is slowly sinking in price year on year, it is apparent we need to plan for the future.
Well, it's something that I've been saying for long enough. You know, the whole of the eastern flank of this nation pretty much is a soft sediment coast, and probably one of the most dynamic coastlines on the continent of Europe. We can't go on the way we've been doing it. We're not managing our coast at all. We're throwing our arms in the air and running away.
A meeting was held in February 2008 to discuss a draft report created by Natural England.
We've looked at what options had been put forward in the past. And I should say these are options, not proposals. All have been in the public domain before, either in the Coastal Habitat Action Plan of 2003 or more recently the Shoreline Management Plan.
My understanding of this particular report is that it sets out to look longer term at the implications of climate change for the Broads, and it identifies a range of options, primarily 4 key options, for how that might be handled in the future.
That was taken to a small invited audience stakeholder group of people who are expert in the Broads and other technical aspects. And the idea, this was not a consultation, this was almost like a sounding board. Now, here are the draft ideas from Natural England. What do you think about how can we make it better? It was that workshop, an external technical workshop, that was picked up in the press as the secret meeting. The 4 options we had in the draft report were basically do nothing, in which case what happens is over time you lose the whole of the Upper Thurn and indeed the whole of the Broads. Maintain the line, and indeed in a response to comments made to us, we've now widened the brief of that to include also improve the line. The third option was a retreat, but a small retreat. We haven't specified a line, but there are several potential lines that could cover. And then the fourth option, which would be an embayment in the Upper Thurn, would entail building 2 short counterwalls, which would basically result in the whole of the Upper Thurn Basin becoming an inlet to the sea.
But yeah, I mean, actually seeing it in black and white and seeing the map that showed which area would be affected, yeah, it just confirmed what I'd been told, and it confirmed that this was a potentially fairly explosive story.
Well, initially I wasn't surprised, because I fully understand, given the surges that we've had, global warming, the flooding, that all these different organisations were going to have to look at different options, worst case scenarios. But the way in which it came into the public domain, and then the reaction of Natural England and particular DEFRA and the Secretary of State was, I thought, pretty bloody minded on the grounds of, well, this is likely to happen. Baroness Young, the head of the Environment Agency, effectively gave a very pessimistic outlook and said, that undoubtedly the Broads were going to salinate. And I could well understand that local people in the area immediately affected were going to be outraged. There was an impact upon house prices there, and it seemed incredibly defeatist.
It was this issue of falling house prices and the question of compensation and social justice that quickly came to the fore.
Now we know that the release of that draft report has had a dramatic effect on those communities. They can't just stand back and say, oh, it's nothing to do with us, Gov. They have a direct responsibility for the impact of what they've said on those communities.
Natural England's remit is about the natural environment, but it's also people's use of the natural environment, so it covers recreation and access. It does not cover people, property, houses. Those sort of representation comes from the local authorities and the Environment Agency in putting forward and valuing schemes.
Sort of in looking at options and what's the best way of managing the coast, we have a lot of regard for the natural environment, but we're also obviously very well aware of the implications and the potential risks as far as people, property, agriculture and everything else is concerned.
The impact on just ordinary people. Did the government have any idea the kind of fear and worry that was being placed upon people not only immediately in the local area but also beyond it? And the crucial issue, big debate about what compensation people might receive in terms of if they were forced to evacuate their homes, how would it be covered from the point of view of insurance? We asked those questions and frankly didn't have any answers.
We've had criticism from people that say, did you think about the effect this would have on the property market when you wrote the story? Well, yeah, we did think about it. We knew it was a possibility that the property market would suffer as a result, but we're not writing just for people selling their homes. There's a whole range of people that have an interest in this. There's people buying homes as well. There's the anglers. There's people with businesses. There's holiday makers. There's walkers, bird watchers. There's a whole range of people with an interest in what happens in the Broads.
Then of course you've got the fact that in many of the vulnerable coastal areas there are some of our richest farmland. Now you could argue perhaps 10 years ago, well, if we lost some of that farmland that wouldn't be disastrous, but we're now talking about living in a world in which there are major problems over food security. So this has a wider impact.
To not defend it must be a last resort, not a first position. And if you're not going to defend where you've previously defended, then you simply have to have a means of social justice to compensate people.
My demand to them is you've got to withdraw this set of proposals, this set of options, even if it's only in draft form. You've got to take it off the table and you've got to say we accept that that other side of the equation has to be addressed, the social justice has to be addressed, and it should be addressed before we are then able to talk about our concerns about the potential impact of climate change.